But they are no longer listing classes like what you would have done before. So they require biochemistry. They're going to require cell and molecular bio and genetics. They're going to require statistics. They're going to require sociology. They're going to require psychology. You get to schools like Drexel, and their list goes on like this now. You've got schools that are contemplating changes but haven't made them yet. So, and then you get to Harvard, and Harvard broke all the rules. I mean, they are, well, hard to figure out what I mean, their logic is, therefore the ideal solution for their course list is one in which the current time commitment to medical science courses is refocused on more relevant content. So they're saying that undergrad schools have to teach this differently. That's how our requirements are going to be. So, for example, they're not going to require math in a normal sense, but they want math taught within the biological sciences. They're not going to require laboratory experience, except that they're going to value time in a laboratory. I'm really not sure what they're saying at this point. But there's another 122 medical schools that haven't told us yet how they're going to reinterpret what their requirements are. Now, the new MCAT is redesigned. It has a biological sciences that includes biochemistry. Duke says you require biochemistry, but we know that in undergraduate schools that may mean that you have to take chemistry and biology and organic chemistry to take biochemistry, but we don't care about that. We just want to make sure you have biochemistry. We don't care how you get to the other classes. We assume that we're not adding those, but just so it's going to be interesting. But the big issue is that there's a new section that's called the social, psychological, and biological basis of behavior, which will include statistics and some elements of sociology, some elements of psychology, probably some elements of anthropology. And it's not clear how a student is supposed to get all of those areas of competencies, which is the way it was first presented, is that medical schools were moving away from course requirements and saying there were certain competencies that we're going to be looking for. And those competencies may be gotten by a massive online course. Maybe you get the competency that way. And in fact, the AMCAS and Khan Academy are teaming up to develop online free resources to help prepare for the new MCAT. And we're saying, okay, so students doesn't necessarily have to take sociology if they can learn this in this Khan Academy. And here's Duke saying you need it, which is what we all were afraid was going to happen when they told us this fairy tale in the beginning, that we're going to look for competencies and we're not going to increase the number of courses that are required. So it's I think what's going to happen is sort of what the world is for veterinary applicants now, is that each school is subtly different from every other school. So if you want to apply to Tufts, you need a course in genetics. If you want to apply to that other school, you need a course in animal zoology and microbiology. This school requires something else. So a poor pre-vet student looking at 5 schools has 15 more courses to take. I think what's going to happen with medical schools is that there's going to be no agreement necessarily, and that students are going to be caught between trying to fit requirements for one school and then not having them for another. So if you can apply in 2014, I'd recommend it.
I have a question about secondaries and how to, or if it's possible to prepare beforehand.
On the secondary applications, the questions are actually available on studentdoctors.net, and you can do some preparation in advance for that. There's no guarantee they won't change, but really, for the most part, you kind of, for our sponsorship, we send out something called a personal inventory. It's 13 essays. We send it out in November, and we ask all of these questions, and most of those can get reworked and used in some of the questions. But certainly for most schools, most of them will give you an opportunity of, is there anything else we should know about you? And you scratch your head, well, didn't I tell them everything already? What else can I possibly tell them? I don't want to leave it blank because that means I'm not pre-med. So it's a little tough sometimes. But the other is sort of why the school. And that's probably the one question that takes the most time. Because, the questions that are more generic are things you probably have written about or used in different sources. You just retool it, you may have to crop it a little differently or change this word or two. But why this school really does require some energy and effort. And you really should have a reason, right? Really, why? It really has to make sense. Yes.
For the people who are not going to be lucky enough to take the 2015 MCAT, do you think there's going to be a little leeway with schools as far as all these requirements that are changing to take them during gap year? Do you think we still look at it?
Well, certainly even now, being like the 28 schools that require biochemistry, most students take it while they're applying. They don't have it. They don't have it to apply, they have it to matriculate. And in the past, when Harvard had a year of calculus, almost every one of our students didn't take Calc 2 unless they got interviewed at Harvard. And they had their fingers crossed, and in February they dropped the class when they told they weren't in, or took it and they got in. So yeah, you can play with some of those things. Of course, the big difference is what's going to be required for the new MCAT. And you can't take those after the MCAT if you be tested on the MCAT. So that's where things are going to get a little
So as long as
confusing.
you have those classes for the MCAT, you should be okay, and then whatever else.
Anything's a little bit different. And again, it looks like some schools are going to use the competencies issues. And then they say, and how do you show these competencies? And they say, take a year of biology. How do you show this competency? Take biochemistry. So it's not, I think we're going to get into some word games here. Harvard is trying to be this sort of new paradigm, but they're really writing about what is only currently available at Harvard College. Because Harvard College does not teach intro bio. It does not teach intro chemistry. There is no organic chemistry class. They have Life Sciences 1A, which is sort of chemistry applied to biology. They have Physical Sciences 1A, which is physics applied to this. So the only place that I'm aware of that has any curriculum that's close to what Harvard is asking for is Harvard College. So they're sort of like, Harvard College changed their curriculum, and Harvard Medical School rewrote their requirements so that it looked right, in a sense. All of this comes, it's not just medical schools randomly making up stuff to make life hard. It all comes from an Howard Hughes Medical Institute, HHMI study about training for the future. And what it commented on was the need for interdisciplinary approaches and the sort of better grounding in the social aspects of medicine. And so there's this goodness around sort of why this is coming into being, and it's badly being sort of plopped down at this point. And I think the first year or two, it's going to be, well, of course, everyone's going to be in the same place, and all of it's going to be guinea pigs. But it's going to be much harder to be someone as a post-bac than someone who's a freshman. As a freshman, you got 4 years to figure all this out. And as a post-bac, you have 1. And often the courses don't make sense because they're all sequenced. And you can't somehow rearrange the sequences so that you do what comes last first. So you should not take biochemistry before you get chem and bio. So how do you get all these things done? It's just a little bit difficult. Yes.
Can you speak a little about like early decision or early action? I don't hear much about it.
Yeah, so some schools actually do have an early action or early decision. It's a binding process. They require, for early decision, typically, pretty high MCAT scores. You have to have everything in place by August 15th, I believe, or August 1st. So you can't take an August MCAT and apply early decision because everything had to be in on August 1st. The difficulty here is that the bar is a little bit higher typically for early decision, and you can't apply any place else until you get a yes or no from them. If it's a yes, you're done, you can't go anyplace else. If it's no, you're now allowed to apply elsewhere, but now you're at the end of the application cycle. So it's a high-risk maneuver. Most schools that have such a system will be willing to sit down and talk to you, or, well, not sit down, but on the phone, talk to you, or perhaps the advisor, and they want to know, give me your MCAT scores, give me the GPA, and we'll tell you whether or not we think it's a good idea or not. So if you're thinking about early decision, you really probably want to reach out to the committee, but you have to have all these numbers in hand. And they'll generally give you some guidance and say, you know what, we don't think it's in your best interest to do that. Now, if they say, yes, we think you should go forward, it's not a guarantee. So I've only had 2 students over my 23 years do it. Both did it successfully, both against my advice. It's like, that's not a good idea. But they would have gotten in anyway, but it saved them a lot of money, and it saved them a lot of angst. But had they not gotten in, it would have been, they would have been in really trouble.
Definitely risk.
So, yes.
Can you just give a story of some of the successful applicants that pop out in your mind, even just 1 or 2, even some oddballs like you're talking about, these unique circumstances, maybe possibly they went against what you said, things like that.
Let's see. Well, there are, let me do it a little more generically than actually, maybe composite people. A lot of, I think, the misinformation that is available is that applying to medical school is making sure you hit all the check boxes. Volunteered, did research, was a crossing guard, whatever it is in this process. And I think that in reality, the most successful applicants have done much more quality experiences than just the quantity of experiences. The ability to do research at some schools has a preference. I'm not